Welcome, heathens and witches, to the Horn
and Cauldron podcast.
Yeah, I'm John Norgrove, and this is Julie Norgrove, and we're here to share some witchy, heathen, and otherwisely
occult and metaphysical
knowledge. Yeah. Probably get into a little herbalism at some point in time, just do all that kind of stuff. So, if you're catching us on your podcast listening apparatus, thank you very much. If you're catching us on YouTube, don't forget to like this video, comment below, share, subscribe, do all that kind of such. If you would like to support more creative content like this, you can hit us up on Patreon. And with all of that plugging out of the way, even though I know I'm forgetting some plugging, let's get into today's topic, which is beginning tarot reading. Or tarot reading, if you want to sound fancy.
No, it's definitely tarot.
I think it's tarot.
It's definitely tarot.
Tarot?
Like Ciroc, isn't that a alcoholic beverage?
I don't know. Sarika Vulcan is a
Ciroc. I think
character
it's an
from Star
beverage.
Trek, but that's really me just showing how much of a freaking nerd I am.
Yeah.
So anywho, back to the tarot reading.
So, what is tarot? Tarot is a type of basically fortune telling with a very specific deck of cards. So you can do fortune telling or divination with a variety of different things, including standard playing cards. But tarot readings go very specifically for a certain type of decks. And a tarot card is made up of 78 cards.
A tarot deck.
Yeah, I don't know what I said, but that's what I meant.
Guess that's an option.
It's made up of 78 cards. That is 22 major arcana, and then the remainder 56 are court cards. So that's 4 suits of 14 cards, and in each suit there are 4 actual court cards there. So tarot actually originated in 15th century Italy. It seems to me like both, wow, that's a super long time, but also, wow, that's not very long ago for as mysterious as tarot really feels.
Well, but if it took form in 15th century Italy, it was logically informed by something previous, right? So, a lot of times in occult practices, first aside, we're not even 5 minutes in, guys, first aside. I'm going to try not to do these, but just deal with it. Trust me, knowledge is good. So the thing is that a lot of times when you get into these, into occultery, as it were, something will be presented initially with significant profundity and depth of history and such, and you may find out that the depth of history isn't quite as deep as you thought. But one also has to assume it wasn't that as though somebody invented a PlayStation 5 in 15th century Italy, right? They didn't just create out of nothingness this absolute piece of completely different and for the time being illogical thing, right? So when you say something's originated in 15th century Italy, right? That is first of all probably most likely a linguistic thing, but also oftentimes it's tarot as we know and respect and love it today is a thing that exists now, that was invented at a specific point in time, but that doesn't mean that 100% of its constituent parts did not exist in some form or another in the past, and one guy was like, that's super gangster, but what if instead of just blank pieces of paper, we use pieces of paper with fun pictures on it, and they're like, that's the thing, that makes it a lot easier to learn. We figured it out, guys.
Well, I mean,
Done.
that makes sense,
right?
because
or something to that extent.
Really what we're looking at is when we have some sort of example or surviving artifact of tarot. Mm-hmm. And really the earliest decks, they were all hand-painted. I mean, so you got to look at it as not a lot of people back in the 1400s had the ability to have paper or thick paper or even have the ability to illustrate something like that. So I feel like, although the information isn't really out there, I feel like it was primarily somebody who would have like inherited something like that, but probably from somebody who was quite well off. This doesn't really seem like it was easy. You can't just like get a rock and scratch into it. I mean, you can, but
this is the thing,
nature
right?
of it is a lot.
We
more
gotta
difficult.
not assume that just because something was old timey that people had a difficult time accessing that particular thing, regardless of the fact that a lot of things were difficult to access by old timey people. I mean, like pieces of bark. Pieces of birch, like this shit's a thing already, or rocks with pictures on it that represent the things that we're talking about.
Well, you and I have looked at other variations of tarot decks, and that's primarily for going to Wasteland and really blending into Wasteland and having a post-apocalyptic style tarot deck. And for those of you that don't know what Wasteland is, Wasteland Weekend is a fully themed post-apocalyptic event. It's a lot like Mad Max in the California desert. I like to say it's Mad Max plus Burning Man, but I've never been to Burning Man, so I can't really say for certainty there. But Wasteland is fantastic. We enjoy going to Wasteland, and we like to go in a fully immersive way, so where everything that we're doing is themed into the post-apocalyptic future. And you would imagine that they wouldn't have as much access to paper or stuff like that then. So we've really looked into a lot of different ways that you could sort of have a tarot deck that way, and there just really aren't a lot of great options to be able to like put together 78 cards. Like the best we could figure was 22, and even then that was kind of pushing it, because you're looking at, well, how do you shuffle these cards? Are they made out of veneer? Is it like plastic sheeting? There's a lot of weird pieces associated with that, but I digress. So when the printing press was invented, though, tarot really exploded, and that also happened in the 15th century. So the printing press was invented in the year 1440, and not too long before the printing press was invented, the invention of block printing happened too. So, really around the 13 or 1400s, people were able to have the craftsmanship to be able to create these and distribute them, other than, one-off writing, like illustrating a set of cards. And really those kind of illustrations were pretty much taken for those that were nobles, as well as those for the clergy and for the church. So you're really looking at this huge popularity that started at the essentially advent of block printing and the printing press, and just sort of continued throughout the Middle Ages. It's been just on a steady upswing, and that's actually really neat, because with a lot of this occult stuff, it's really old, and you see that it was really popular, and then something happened, and then it drops off, and then it resurges again. But tarot has basically been on a steady upswing since it was invented. Now, the word tarot has no known etymology, but it comes from the Italian word tarocchi. Now, they don't know exactly where that word comes from, but they think that it possibly comes from the major arcana from the tarot. So the major arcana were known as trump cards. So a trump card is not Orange Man, but a trump card is a card that trumps another card. So is higher than another card.
Now.
So when you're looking at standard playing cards, a king trumps a queen, who trumps a jack, that sort of thing. So you're looking at the major arcana cards trumping those lower cards. And trump cards were called trionfi. So they think that the word tarocchi probably evolved out of a need to differentiate between a tarot deck and a playing card deck. Really, the popularity and availability of standard playing cards and tarot are kind of like twins. So they think that, you probably had to make a different, understand which one was which, because one has 52 cards, I think. And then the other one has 78 cards. So there's a difference there. As well as initially, these cards were not used as divinatory type of things. They were not used to do any magical stuff. They were used to play card games. So they needed something. Now, in the late 1700s, the popularity of tarot boomed even more so than it previously had, and this is partially because of the printing press being so widely circulated around the world. So it became a lot more available for people, and this is when we start to see references to the tarot having divinatory meanings. So this is probably right around that time where so many people had it that they decided to do something else with it. So in 1781, a Swiss clergyman published this book called Le Monde Primitif, The Primitive World. And in it, he talked about religious symbolism and its survival in the modern world. And one of those things that he talked about in this book was the tarot. And when he thinks primitive, he thinks that any religion that isn't, Christianity primitive, right? So what he's doing, I mean, guys,
right? These fucking people.
Yeah, what even?
Looking to get canceled.
So he posited that the tarot came actually from the Egyptian words tar, which means royal, and ro, which means road, and that it was the royal road to wisdom and unlocking the secrets of Isis and Thoth. And we'll come back to this Egyptian thing and Isis and Thoth in a little bit, but he was really the first one to say, like, hey, maybe this is from other mysterious ancient religions. And in the 19th century, a French occultist who was named Eliphas Levi, he posited a link between the tarot and the Kabbalah. And he believed that the tarot was connected to the Kabbalistic tree of life, which has 22 paths that coincide with the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And so Illuminati happened. The thing is tarot's origins are so far back and so shrouded in mystery that we just don't really know. So, good luck figuring that out.
Yeah.
What we do know, though, is that the Joker card in the standard playing card deck has no relation to the Fool card in tarot. The Joker card appeared in the U.S. around 1857. So, I'm guessing around the height of the Wild West times. So I feel like maybe the first guy to add a Joker into a deck was just like, this card can do anything because I need to cheat and win. It has nothing to do with tarot. Yeah. Which I think is pretty funny.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So within the tarot, we have the major arcana, and these are your big concept cards. These are divine feminine and divine masculine power, the power of love and death and rebirth and fortune and inspiration and all that stuff. So these are your heavy hitters. It's been said that these represent the Fool's journey, which is a symbolic journey through life in which the Fool overcomes obstacles and gains wisdom. Some of those are through death, and some of those are using death as an allegory. So there's a lot of really interesting Fool's journey type of concepts associated with it. And the Major Arcana has 22 cards. I put this list down in the show notes so that I could read all 22 of them. I am not going to read all 22 of them.
They're in the show notes.
They're in the show notes.
Yeah.
So go and take a look at those, or just look it up on the internet. So that's the Major Arcana. The Minor Arcana.
I mean, we can read all of them right now.
Do you want to read them all?
No.
Yeah. See, I looked at that list.
How fast can you read them? It's like
Ooh. Okay.
It's hold on.
Are we gonna do that?
No,
Is that what's happening now?
Hold on. Listen.
Okay.
Listen. I'm gonna read them so fast you don't even know. Ah! Yeah.
That's not how that
Family
works.
Guy made that joke like 25 years ago. So you're welcome. Yeah, we're not gonna read them. I just wanted to make that joke. Let's move on to the Minor Arcana. I'm sorry.
I thought you were gonna make me try to read them as quickly as I
that's
possibly
horrifying.
can.
No,
Ooh, I
that's
feel
not
like I
nice.
have to practice for that. I am not like an auctioneer where they're like and they're just like saying words and numbers and stuff. I can't even. I can't even.
Pretty fucking fast, right? In the grand scheme of things, when I'm talking to people.
Micro machines fast?
No, but that's the point, right? Is that listen, I talk pretty damn fast, and have been told as such many a time. But auctioneers, those people are wizards.
are.
And I would love for them to share the secrets of their speed talking. But yeah, that's not for me. I don't know how
That
to do
would
that.
that would be pretty fun.
That would be fun. I would auction everything that I say to everybody all the time. It would immediately get annoying, and then
my
I would have no
God.
friends. So you're welcome.
It would be so taxing.
I know, but I would do it all the time if I had the ability to just be like, just firing them off. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh man, that would be the worst.
That is immediately my motion for high speed anything, and I don't know why. Bollywood has permanently affected my mind. I'm just like, oh, you got to do something fast, just
You just
get it done.
Bollywood head
Just
shake.
get it done. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so minor arcana.
So the minor arcana is usually more like day-to-day kind of issues. So the minor arcana, we just made that into one. I've either had too much wine or not enough wine.
Probably not enough.
It's probably not enough. So there's 4 suits. So there's wands or staves, and those signify fire and energy, motivation, passion, creativity. There's swords, and that signifies air, thoughts, words, ideas, areas of conflict in our lives. The suit of cups signifies water and emotions, intuition, relationships. And last is the pentacles or coins, signifies earth, the physical items, the material world, as well as money. In each one of these suits, they have cards from an ace through a 9, and then they have 4 court cards. So that's a page, a knight, a queen, and a king. And each one of those cards means something different than the other card. So like a 4 of wands is different than a 4 of cups. It has a different meaning than a 4
number isn't linearly connective through the suits, right? It's just that we have to number them.
Yeah.
Something.
There needs to be some sort of...
Yeah.
Yeah. So... for modern decks, because there's a few ancient decks that date back to the 1400s, and I can talk about those, but we'll probably talk about those in a different show. But right now I'm really going to focus on the basics, what you need to get off the ground and running, especially if you just got a tarot deck or you have had one for a while and you kind of don't really get it and you're just stuck reading this book every time and you're like, this is such a waste. So numerous occult groups have further developed the original concepts of tarot. So it has gone through a huge amount of evolution in the time that we have knowledge about tarot. And most famously, the occult group called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn has really drastically advanced what tarot as we know it.
Yeah.
And really that breaks down into 2 sort of paths. So there is the Rider-Waite deck, which was created by Arthur Edward White and was illustrated by Pamela Coleman Smith. And that deck was first published in 1909. So that is widely accepted as the standard base for a tarot deck. So most of the tarot decks that you see out there in the world right now were created using this Rider-Waite system. In fact, it is just sort of it's really the gold standard of tarot. It's what my first deck was. It's what I learned on. It's what my mom had. So it's something that is really there, but that doesn't mean that you have to start with this deck. But it's good to know that everything that's popularly out there pretty much relies on this deck as its base. And then there is the Thoth deck. Now, the Thoth deck, it was created by Aleister Crowley, and it was painted by Lady Frida Harris. And this deck was printed sometime between 1938 and 1943. But it wasn't published as a deck until 1969, which is 35 years after Aleister Crowley published the Book of Thoth. So this guy basically had a deck made for himself. And then just used it himself until finally he was like, all right, I guess I should share this with the world.
Yeah.
And I'm not personally super familiar with this deck, but it is a very cool deck. It has a very cool history of it. And the deck itself and the way that the meanings are inside of it are fairly different from the Rider-Waite deck. So it is a more complicated deck to go with. Some people say don't get a Thoth deck, it's too complicated, it's hard to remember. The thing is if you're really into tarot decks, it's probably a good one to have in your collection. If nothing else, just to sort of expand on what it is that the tarot can be.
Yeah, and if you're like a big Aleister Crowley fan or a Lady Frida Harris fan or anything like that.
Or, I mean, you're just really a fan of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
Aleister Crowley fans, that's like a thing.
It's definitely
it's like
a
whole thing. Like, 100%. So, like, yeah. Well, and, I mean, like, okay, man. So this is where you're gonna get into. This is where we're picking fights with people. No, we're not. We're not picking fights with nobody. But where it is often you see a fight get picked is between like implied traditionalists and implied traditionalism, and like modernization or personalization or anything like that. Like I've never owned a Rider-Waite deck. I have no desire to own a Rider-Waite deck. Like, I'm not hating on the Rider-Waite deck. I just don't want one. Like, that's not my jam, yo. If you don't like grape jelly, don't buy grape jelly. That's the way that I look at it, right? Like,
yeah.
I just don't want grape jelly. That's a lie. I super want grape jelly. In fact, I can't think of a jelly I don't want. You know what I don't want is whatever that fucking apple butter shit is.
I think grape jelly is the only jelly that we don't have on hand right now in the house.
Yeah, I love jelly, but you know what I'm talking about. You get what I'm saying, right? So like for me, the Rider-Waite deck like doesn't have like a special place or a special value or whatever. I would love to like side by side see a Rider-Waite deck and a Thoth deck and like actively compare the two. That's interesting to me, but again, I also don't have a desire to own a Thoth deck. I don't own a Thoth deck. I mean, all the decks that I own are like vaguely insane.
Yeah.
So I prefer vaguely insane decks. They're the best. I love them. I'm not saying insane in a bad way, but you know what I mean.
Well, there are a lot of, now that tarot is becoming hugely popular. So when I was, not even a baby witch. When I was a kid, my mom had this tarot deck and she would pull out and she'd do readings and stuff like that. And there wasn't anything else. That was the only thing that you could find. So it's really amazing because right now there are so many kinds of divinatory card decks that you can get. And it's not just tarot. You can also get oracle cards. And while we're not directly talking about oracle cards in this, I do want to talk about them briefly just so that you can kind of understand the differences between what a tarot deck and an oracle deck is. So you guys all know the difference between regular playing cards and tarot cards. And if you don't, really my question is how have you never seen playing cards?
Or how have you never seen tarot cards? Both are an option. Although technically you can do divination with playing cards.
Yes.
And technically you can play a card game with tarot cards.
Yes. And we will talk about divination with playing cards in a different episode.
12 extra IVs.
I was just like,
we've
been listening to these. We've been listening a lot recently to these Irish and Scottish YouTubers reviewing movies. And when we get into new YouTubers, we just like binge everything that they have.
Heavily, yeah.
And these guys have a different way of pronouncing words in the English language. Wow, I really can't talk. And I feel like it's affecting my mind.
I don't know what that means. Yeah, they speak with an accent. It's they're funny. They're great guys.
They're really great.
We super love both of their channels, and we've just been like endlessly binging those as of late.
Yeah.
So that one of them, Voyager just taking over our souls.
Yeah, well, one of them says the word now, like now, and it's causing problems in my brain box.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
We've just been listening to...
Not enough foreign films. That's what that is. You gotta watch more foreign films. Artsy stuff, guys. We're gonna watch a bunch of artsy foreign films. Don't worry about it.
No. With all the acting training that I've had, when I listen to a accent for too long, I kind of start to pick up on the accent.
An accent?
Yeah, and I kind of pick up on the accent and start incorporating it into my speech. So my brain is like kind of fighting against it, but fighting for it at the same time.
That's not acting training. That's just crazy. That's just craziness. What we just got was an admonition of crazitude.
Anyways,
An admonition of crazitude. You heard me.
Oh, gosh. So, Oracle decks. Oracle decks are decks that don't fit in with the standard tarot. They're not a playing card deck, and they don't follow the same conventional rules as a major minor arcana type of setup like a tarot deck would. But they have other cards. So I have an Oracle deck that I really love, and it's got however many cards that's in it, and they have nothing at all to do with tarot. There is not a tower, there's not a death card, there's not an empress, they're just a different set of cards. And really the Oracle decks can be
functionally
anything.
A tarot deck follows the form or structure of tarot, right? Which is like some major arcana and they mean some stuff, and some minor arcana split into suits and they mean some stuff. Whereas an Oracle deck is just like a bunch of pieces of paper with pictures on them that each one has an individual meaning. Any number, size, shape, distribution of knowledge, whether it's suits or no suits, whether it's using another thing. Like I have a deck of rune cards, so it's a rune oracle deck. So it's just, instead of having like a bit of wood or a rock with a rune carved on it, it's a piece of paper with a rune printed on it. So that's an oracle deck. So I know that the standard way to think about it is that like oracle deck is just a different kind of tarot deck. The more accurate way to think about it is that like all cards can be an oracle deck, and a tarot deck is a very specific kind of cards that do oracling. Because I have seen oracle decks that are just like runes. So that's not a huge difference. It's just runes on paper, right? Different. And I've seen oracle decks that are like very similar to tarot, but they just call themselves oracle and there's like some extra stuff or whatever. And we've also seen oracle decks where it's just like, here's a bunch of rocks, and then you read through and you're just like, this rock means this now. That it's just 23 and a half cards about rocks. Any number of cards that they wanted about rocks. You know what I'm saying? So like there is connection, but the connection is sort of one of those like linguistic confusions, It's like the whole hot tub jacuzzi thing, right? Yeah. And so that's the way that I like to think of oracle, because if you think about it in terms of tarot, then you sort of lose sight of some of the greater potentials for oracle, and you also sometimes are going to like definitely not click on that Kickstarter link because you're like, what's a B oracle deck? I don't know what that is. And then you just like swipe past that, but like secretly that was like dope B stuff, or what have you. Yeah. And also I'm saying this from the place where you shouldn't buy as many tarot decks as I have in this last year. Kickstarter, me, and tarot had like a little thing going on. Yeah, we got for a while there. I still have a bunch coming. And I already have a bunch.
And tarot Kickstarter, we're in a relationship.
Yeah, it's serious.
It's serious. So there's also
kickstarted another one today. So
we actually both kickstarted the same tarot Kickstarter, but because we both want the deck. Yeah. So that's going to be a fun one because we actually don't have any decks where we both have the same deck. Nope. We have decks that are from the same artist, but not the same actual.
Not the same not the actual same decks. So we have completely different decks. We also do tarot. We tarot differently. Whatever the action word for tarot is.
We'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Again, we'll talk about that later.
There's a lot of decks that you can find on Kickstarter and whatnot, and some of them have the conventional tarot style, and some of them don't, and some of them are a blend. So there's a lot more options out there that are sort of fragmenting, so you kind of just have to like take a look at it and see what
everybody's just doing what Aleister Crowley did. He's like, hey, this tarot thing seems nice. I'm gonna do it a little different. And he just did it his way, and bam, Thoth deck. Yeah. But all right, and we're back. So
we're gonna talk next about choosing a deck.
Yeah.
So if you've been wanting to get into tarot and don't have a deck yet,
have you been wanting to get into tarot and don't have a deck yet?
Or do you want more tarot decks in your life?
Can't even say it.
Wow, man, this is we are just, oof.
It's fine, guys.
Some days you got it, and some days...
Yeah, man.
Some days are just days. So a standard tarot deck size is 2 3/4 by 4 3/4. So it is larger than a standard playing card deck. However, other sizes and shapes are growing in popularity, and you can get pretty much anything. You can get little mini decks that are like 2 inches. You can get circle decks.
Yep.
You can get like triangle and hexagon. There's all kinds of stuff. You can even get really big decks. But get whatever deck size you want. However, you do want to keep in mind that at some point you're going to have to shuffle these cards in some way. So I have small hands, not absurdly small hands, but I do have smaller hands. I'm a girl. And
small hands like Robin. Freeing baby hands.
Yeah, small hands like Robin from Teen Titans Go. And
very specific reference.
And I have a hard time sometimes shuffling because the cards are like too big for my little hands to get around. So so you do want to kind of keep that in mind when you're thinking about getting a deck, is especially if you're getting a large size deck or even a small size deck, that the larger or more oddly shaped the deck is, the harder it can be to shuffle them, and you may have to resort to alternative means of shuffling.
Also, tarot deck cards generally, not all the time, but generally thicker than a regular playing card, so that it's going to make it a little bit different with regard to shuffling it.
Yeah.
And if you have like a soft touch tarot deck or a like matte touch tarot deck, I have I have a deck over here that's like a soft touch tarot deck. When we get into that, we'll talk more about that. But it makes it like virtually impossible to shuffle in a traditional way because the cards they don't slide against each other. So like that's another thing to think about, is like, what are you comfortable working with regard to like not being physically frustrated. Really.
Yeah, and there are some ways of pulling the cards that can help. So if you don't really have the ability to shuffle a deck very well, that these can kind of help you, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. But really, a lot of people will ask, well, what tarot deck should I get? And this is a tough question because I want literally all of the tarot decks. I want a whole wall of them. Personally, I would say it's a good idea to have a Rider-Waite deck for reference, because then you kind of understand the basic framework that most tarot decks are made of, but it is by no means a requirement. And they can be, for some people, they are very easy to read, and for some people, they're not. Really, my best advice is to choose a deck where the artwork vibes with you. What you really ideally want from a tarot deck is a deck where you can look at the card that you have drawn and understand intuitively, or with maybe tiny words at the bottom of the deck, what that card means. Yes, you can use the books, and the books are a great resource. And I even though I know what some of the cards mean, I always look at the book from the individual author of the tarot deck to see what perspective they were looking at when they were creating that card. But really, you want the imagery from the deck to vibe with you, and that can be whatever it is that you want.
Yeah. The way that I look at buying a tarot deck is it's sort of like asking, well, like you're asking somebody to pick, like, okay, well, what car should I buy? And it's like, all right, man, well, I mean, like, we can give you a bunch of, like, MSRP information, and we can give you a bunch of, like, safety ratings and all this kind of stuff, but when, like, tires hit the pavement, it's really kind of, like, what you feel comfortable in. Like, if you're used to driving tiny little sedans, you're probably not gonna buy, like, a big old Mack truck, but, like, I mean, maybe. So it's like a personal preference thing, like a car or a football team or anything like that. So like for each person, it's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah. And if you're not sure what's out there, you can find tarot decks in a ton of places. Obviously, you can find them in local brick and mortar stores that have books. Many bookstores will carry tarot decks, albeit a selection of much more popular decks that you'll find there, much more mainstream. You can also find decks on Etsy. You can find decks on eBay. You can find decks on Kickstarter. Keep in mind, those usually take a while to get to you. Of course, you can find them on Amazon. You can find decks in a variety of places. I really like finding decks through Kickstarter. I really like supporting somebody's project, but Etsy is also a fantastic resource. Mm-hmm. You're finding a lot of small artists there. You can also find decks, or at least an idea of what kind of decks are out there, by using Instagram. Instagram is great for this because of the hashtagging that you can use, yeah. So you can just look up tarot decks. Yeah. As far as purchasing a deck, there is this misconception out there where you need to be gifted a deck, where you're not supposed to buy a deck for yourself. Guys, I don't know where this came from, but this is not true. You do not have to be gifted a deck, just like you don't have to be a hereditary witch. Those are made-up rules.
It's just weird gatekeeping. Don't do weird gatekeeping.
Yeah, those are made-up rules for weird gatekeeping.
Yeah,
so you can buy
don't do weird gatekeeping.
Whatever deck you want. Yeah. Buy as many decks as you want.
But also, at the same time, man, if you think that you need to have a deck gifted to you and, like, that's your thing, then, like, by all means, gift people decks or whatever it is that you're doing. Like, that's also fine. But, like, don't put barriers in other people's bananas. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, don't...
Yeah. And another banana barrier that you don't want is used decks. So it is there is another misconception out there that used decks are bad luck. So again, that is not a thing. I've never heard that before. There are energies associated with physical items or physical things in general, and if you're getting a used deck, or I mean, even if you're getting a not used deck, it's a great idea to cleanse that deck and charge that deck. Mm-hmm. That way you're kind of removing any negative things there. Like, I want to get a vintage Rider-Waite deck from, like, the first printing. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, okay, well, it's probably going to cost me like $100. I don't care that that's used. And I'm going to probably get it anyway because I'm weird and I want a whole...
Because you want it, yeah, that's all.
And I want a whole bunch of decks. I'll probably try to do the same thing for a Thoth deck. For me, it's unnecessary to have that kind of gatekeeping that really only alienates people from the craft and discourages people from doing it. So, again, you don't need to be get a deck that you like. You don't need to be gifted a deck. But also, used decks aren't bad either, because if you're if you have somebody out there telling you that you have to be gifted a deck, but they're also telling you that used decks are bad, that's kind of conflicting signals there. So
back at it again.
So for keeping your deck charged and cleansed and whatever, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this, and it's really sort of a personal preference. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like washing clothes when you buy them. Wash them before you wear them. But when you get a deck, you want to cleanse it. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. You can do it in moonlight, where you leave the deck in a place where the light of the moon will touch it. You can do the same thing with sunlight too, if you're a solar type of person as opposed to a lunar person. You can also charge it by sort of passing it through smoke. Keep in mind that you don't want the smoke to damage your cards, so definitely don't get too close to that. I do not recommend spraying anything on your deck. Like, I know you've got moon water hanging around there. Do not sprinkle moon water on your deck. Decks are made of paper. Paper and water don't mix.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, aerosol at a grand distance, maybe.
But don't, yeah. You can sort of pass your deck through smoke that's wafting. That can be incense, that can be sage.
Yeah. But you're technically putting stuff on there, so, you also clean your decks.
Yeah. You can place your deck near some crystals, or place crystals around or on top of your deck. You can also meditate with it. You can also carry your deck around with you for a while, or place it underneath your pillow for it to remain charged. You can keep it on your altar. There's a variety of things that you can do. Do what you feel makes the most sense for you and your own magical practice. Now, in keeping a deck, most decks will come in a box. Some of them come in a tin. Some of them come with a variety of accoutrements, such as books and whatnot. And sometimes the books fit in the box or the tin, and sometimes they don't.
Why are you putting your deck in a box and you're not making your book fit in the box also? Listen, if it's a big book, that makes sense. But if it's a small book, but it's only just slightly not the right size to fit in the box, that's just not nice.
Yeah, that definitely bothers my OCD. I have one deck where the deck isn't a deck size box, and I have a full size book that goes with it, and I'm just like, why did you do this to me?
No. See, this is the thing. I love the full size book. That's great. I want all the pictures and the details and whatnot. I have a deck that's in a box, and then the book is the exact same size as the box, but since paper has like interior width, it doesn't fit into the box, and like my eyeballs hurt when I look at it every time. I'm like, why would you do this to me? It's just not nice. And it's a beautiful deck. I love this deck. I use this deck, but still, every time I have to use the book, I'm just like, man, I have to keep both of them in like a bag. Yeah. So that way I don't lose them because they're the same size, which is just like unacceptable in my pile of books.
Well, keeping your deck in a bag is actually pretty common. So there are some people that swear by keeping your deck in a bag that is made of cotton or other natural material. Of course, I've seen a lot of decks that are kept in not natural materials. For most people, if you're getting something that is velvet or velveteen, that's made out of plastic of some sort. I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. But just so you know, that's a fabric thing. So
yeah, but like also, dude, like I have a deck that's in a metal tin. I have a deck that's in like a very high gloss, like cardboard box. So that's basically just cardboard box spray painted with plastic. Yeah. You know, so like.
Well, some people don't keep the box.
I know, I understand that, but like, you know, you gotta roll with it. Yeah. For me, it's more about the organization of a box, making my life easier. Again, also with the bag thing, some people are very against using leather pouches and bags for this stuff. Yeah. If you're against it, that's fine. If you're okay with it yourself, then go right ahead and do it. Yeah. There aren't really any in my opinion, and fast rules on that kind of a thing. Some stuff I particularly do not keep with leather, and some stuff I specifically do keep with leather. Yeah. Just set your own rules and then go with them. Yeah. Is really the way that I look at that.
Another popular thing for people to do is to keep their deck wrapped in a square of cloth. So like a deck, like a tarot cloth, like a reading cloth.
Like an altar cloth?
Yeah, when you see them online or with Kickstarters nowadays, they're primarily called altar cloths. They usually are about the size of a bandana, and they have printed, screen printed stuff on them. And those are great too. And if you have a variety of things, like let's say you have a deck and the book is a different size and you also have this square of cloth, you can just keep all that stuff in a bag. It's really kind of whatever seems best to you. I prefer to keep them in boxes because I have so many, and boxes stack better than bags, but bags inherently feel really cool. You feel super like witchy when you like pull it out of a mystical looking bag. I'm pretty into that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm real into the box. I like the box. Yeah. It's nice.
So you can do the square of cloth, of course, without necessarily wrapping your deck in the square of cloth. The great thing about these cloth bits is that you don't need them, but it's a good idea to have them because, especially if you're taking your tarot deck with you and you're planning on doing readings out on the fly, we are
road readings.
Yeah, we're currently in a place where you're not really wanting to go out and give readings to people, because it's the year 2021. Yeah. But there was a time that was popular, and there will be a time again when that is popular. Yeah. And you really want to have something to put.
Do it for yourself. You want to have.
You want to have something to put your cards on. First of all, it looks cool. It helps to set sort of the scene, and it helps to keep your cards
almost
clean.
Always look cool. Yes.
Yeah, because I know that I do. I have a deck at work, and I will do like a quick reading at work, and sometimes my desk is not as clean as I want it to be, so it helps keep your cards clean as well.
Yeah, I have two travel decks that I bounce back and forth between, but it's for me it's not even about like the physical cleanliness, because like sometimes you just got to wipe your cards down, which is like a thing that I do, but at the same time it's like it's sort of like bringing a portable altar. It's like, what if you could bring the, like, wooden thing with the, like, candelabra and the, like, little knickknack that you have? Well, okay, so you can't bring, like, all of that everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
But, like a bandana, you can bring that anywhere, man.
Yep.
Especially if you're using it to hold the pieces of paper that you're going to do the thing with.
Exactly.
You
or
know,
if it's
so,
folded and tucked into a little
or tucked
drawstring
into
bag.
a box or a bag or what have you. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, you know, really you can kind of go with whatever you want there. That's the beauty of this, and really everything that we talk about is here are some ideas, and really do whatever you want, what you think is right for you. However you do it with your cards, you want to get to know your deck. So I like to, when I get a new deck, to sort of like sit with it for a little bit and look at the illustrations. I'm not necessarily going over every card in the deck and like looking at the book and whatnot. But you want to get to know your cards. Each deck has its own energy, has its own voice, and you will definitely learn that. So when I typically do readings, I usually do them with multiple decks. So I usually have at least one tarot deck and also my oracle deck. I actually only have one oracle deck. I was just thinking about that the other day, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. I definitely need another oracle deck. But the one I have, I love so much. And you guys can see all the decks that we have in our tarot tour video that we did a little while ago. We have some new additions since then, so we'll probably do a part 2.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2 of that at some point in time.
But each deck will give you its own voice and has its own level of sass, as well as humor and seriousness. So over time, you will start to understand the way that your deck talks to you, outside from the meaning of the cards that it is giving you, which is a very, very subtle thing that honestly I never really started to understand and realize until I started using multiple decks.
Okay, yeah, totally. You know what? I would go so far as to say this is the way it is with all techniques of divination, is that each individual thing relies on an aspect. That aspect is going to change the manner in which it's communicated to you. You know, and like I have a bunch of tarot decks and a bunch of oracle decks. And before tarot and oracle, I did like rune work and stuff like that. And I mean, there's a difference between, you know, one set of runes and another set, or doing like runes with the ones that you carved versus rune work with like pattern pulling and things like that, which is like a different thing when we get into rune work. You know, I'll talk about some of my particulars in there. But like, yeah, each deck is like really different, and I'm the same way. I generally always work with like at least 2, but normally it's 3 decks when I do a thing. So like definitely there's like each deck says a different thing, and also sometimes I choose to use the deck, and when we get to like actual reading, we'll talk about it. Like I choose to use the decks in different places. At different times, depending on what I'm pulling, and you know, and what I'm trying to do.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So,
well, that perfectly brings me to the next thing, which is tarot spreads.
Planned transition.
Look at that. That was unplanned.
It was not planned. I don't know what she's going to talk about next at all.
Yeah, so. He's the pretty one. I'm the smart one.
Just here to drink and eat red vines right now, and just gently add.
It's the weirdest combination of drinks and snacks that you have versus what I have. You have red vines and Miller High Life, and I have red wine and mango chili gummy bears.
I mean, is it that different?
I mean, it is, but it's very...
Is the mango chili gummy bear just the red wine of the red vine? You know what I'm saying?
No.
Somebody out there probably does.
I don't know.
I guess, dude.
We've got 2 listeners. I don't think either of them know.
I am drinking a champagne quality beer product. No sponsor, but like if they wanted to, I'm not going to.
It is not. It is not.
It says it on the can. They can't lie about things. Champagne quality product. And you know what? I'm bringing it back movie style. What's up? I'm watching this movie of you explaining to me how to use tarot. I've already learned like 3 things, and I'm in the podcast.
Yeah, and you know what, you guys? I don't actually really tell. Like, he knows what what the topic is for the podcast.
Oh, yeah, I choose the topic and shit.
Sometimes I talk to him about the research that I do, but for the most part, he has no idea what we talk about in these podcasts. I have a tiny amount of knowledge until they actually happen.
About everything, so I just, like, interact and share some extra knowledge and sidetrack the topic. So, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely
back on topic.
Back on topic, okay. So, spreads. There's a couple of different things here that we're going to talk about, but first, I'm going to talk about the types of readings. So, a tarot spread, first of all, is
I was going to say we should describe the word spreads. A spread?
How you're laying the cards out. It's a butter. It's a...
But yeah, it's a butter. That's exactly what I was thinking.
The first thing that I thought with spreads was like, I can't believe it's not butter. That was literally the first thing I thought. Margarine spread. Stuff I can't.
To the rest of us with minds in the dumpster. Skull.
So a spread is the way that you're laying down the cards and interpreting them.
You keep going. I'm going to do that about 12 times, so it's okay.
So that is basically like how you're laying this stuff down. So you can do, some popular spreads. I'm trying really hard not to say the word, and I'm just like, I guess I'm going to do it.
Yeah, you just have to say it, and you have to deal with me smirking inappropriately.
Yeah, so so one of the most popular spreads is a 3-card spread. So that's 1, 2, 3 cards placed in whatever way you want. Sometimes it's left to right. Sometimes it's in a jagged pattern, however you want to handle this. Up and down. And these 3-card spreads are fantastic because this is a really great way for you to do a little bit of tarot work, but without doing too much and without getting into really large and complex readings. So 3-card spreads are a great place to start. In fact, I think they're a better place to start than a 1-card pull, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So you can use a 3-card spread for a variety of things. You can do past, present, future. You can do what the situation is, what the obstacles are, and the advice to overcome those obstacles. You can do it as a relationship thing, which is you. Then the middle part is the answer to the question or the relationship dynamic. And then the third card is the other person. You can also do opportunities, challenges, outcome. There's this huge list of 3-card spreads, and basically any 3 things that you can think of can definitely go there.
I'm a bit of a numerologist. I love numbers. Obviously, I'm a huge freaking math nerd. But I always generally pull in factors of 3. It's a very rare bird when I don't. And I specifically, just as an aside, because it wasn't brought up in your list, which I find fascinating, for me, a 3-card spread is like the structure of a sentence. Right? So it's not really like past, present, future. Although like sometimes it is past, present, future. Listen, those times it's obvious when the cards are like, hey, you remember when you did this thing? You know about this thing that you're doing right now? This is how this thing's gonna turn out. Maybe you should stop doing that thing. or something assholey like that, because the cards follow their reader, and I'm a bit of an asshole.
They're really sassy.
My cards are very sassy. They are very strongly opinionated about what I should and shouldn't do, regardless of financial safety. Yeah. So I read my cards in a sentence.
So like it's telling you a story.
Sort of, yeah. It's just that the 3 cards are... It's really like subject, object, action, but even that would define it too much into like the first card is a subject and the second card. It's just sort of like all 3 cards are trying to tell me the exact same thing, and like sometimes it's like a story where it's like the beginning, the middle, and the end, and sometimes it's really like some information, like an observation, an action, and then a specification of the potential outcomes of that action, right? So I look at my cards as sort of like the coordinates for a particular direction with which like the waveform can collapse. If that makes sense, right? Where it's sort of like the three cards just represent part of a sum totaled whole. And that is more often than not. More often than anything, my cards aren't like first, middle, last, or like doing something very linear like that. And for me, the way that I read my cards, and again, everybody does this differently, right? But this is just another way, if you've either never considered it, or like if you do something similar and you think that you're crazy. You're not. I'm also crazy.
Or you're both crazy together.
We're both crazy, but it's okay because there's two of us now. Hit me up. What's up? But yeah, for me, the cards are the three cards tell a story in their in a continuation, right? So it's not really like any one is particularly first or last, or there's any like particular order or structure to it. It's a little bit more like chaotically saying words out loud. You know, is the way that I think about it. Is sort of like a conversation.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which is just a little different.
Yeah. So that's a 3-card spread. The next most popular type of card pull is a single card pull. And this is kind of like easiest explained in like, if every day you pulled one tarot card and it gave you an idea, then that's kind of what you're looking at. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like what your day is about, but you could ask a question, you can get a card. You know, so it's like, what should I do about this thing? And then you get a card. But I find that many times a singular card is not super helpful for a question that I'm answering. So that is a really popular spread that people use as a single card.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But it can also, you know, be difficult to understand what the cards mean when you're asking a question that typically has a complex answer, and then they're only allowed to give you one of 78 possible answers.
Yeah, certainly, yes, yeah.
So,
for me, a single card pull is, first of all, that's like my main thing that I do, like, if I'm like out at a place, instead of like doing a spread, because I like to like leave them out for a little bit. Generally I'll just like shuffle them, pull a card, and be like, all right, this is what this means. But I also specifically don't ask a question.
Yeah.
I don't ask how my day's going, but I simply pull a card to see what needs to be learned for the day.
Yeah.
Which is a little backwards, but a little different. You know?
And that's pretty common for the single card pull stuff, is to just sort of let the cards drive. Another popular spread is a Celtic cross spread, and this spread is where you have a 5 cards, and they're in the shape of a cross. So up, down, you have 1, 2, 3, and then you have
4,
left,
5.
right, 4, 5 on either side of that center card. And then next to it, you have 4 cards in a vertical line. So it would look like a solar cross that is a cross with equal arms next to like an uppercase I. And this is a very popular spread for cards. I have never been a huge fan of this particular spread because it involves a significator card, which is a card that represents you or the person who you're doing cards for. That's called a querent. And it is a lot to take in as far as the meaning of the cards themselves. And then when you couple that with what the position in the Celtic cross is, it's just kind of a lot. And especially if you're new to reading tarot, it can feel very overwhelming. But even as an experienced tarot reader myself, I typically do not use this spread. There's nothing wrong with it inherently. I just find that it's a bit overwhelming, and I like to freeform a little bit more. So that one is a really popular one. Take it or leave it. Most tarot decks that you purchase will give you a variety of different spreads that you can use. Just because it's in the book doesn't mean you have to use it. Just because people commonly use it doesn't mean you have to use it. Another really fun one that I've seen a lot more of in the last couple of years is a relational type of a card pulling. So it's where you pick a card that has significance to you.
Like you choose it from the
question.
deck, like you go through it?
Yeah, like if you...
Not like you just, like you shuffle it and you draw one, but like you, like I like spread my cards out. I'm like, this card is the card that I want to use for my question.
Yes. Okay. Like, let's say you're looking for inspiration around a particular thing.
Sure.
You know, you need inspiration for some sort of project that you're working on. So the card, the major arcana card, the star, is commonly associated with inspiration.
Sure.
So what you would do is you would shuffle your cards, and then you would find the star card inside of your deck, and then the cards directly in front and in back of that would be the things for your reading.
Oh.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay.
It is really interesting.
That is cool. Yeah, I dig
it's
that.
not something
I've never
that
done
I
that.
typically use because of the necessity to kind of like figure out what your relational card is.
Mm-hmm.
And usually those the card that you're looking for that's sort of like your starting point is a major arcana card. Again, those are big concepts, you know. So, you know, if you've got like a lot of change happening in your life and you want to know how that's going, you would choose the Tower card or you would choose the Death card depending on the nature of that. You know, so that's a fun one, is the relational card kind of one. And you're typically only looking at 2 cards from that, sometimes only 1. It just kind of depends. So you can kind of look at that one essentially as its own 3-card spread, where if you're looking for inspiration, your middle card is the star card, your left card is what's inspired you in the past, and then your right card would be what is, you know, the path to take, what's going to inspire you next, or the path that you should take, or the path that this project is going to take you on next. So there's a lot of sort of places that you can take that.
Totally.
And then lastly is choose your own. So, you know,
choose your own adventure.
Yeah, choose your own adventure. You know, you can make up whatever you want. If you prefer 2 cards, if your lucky number is 6, you know, go ahead and
draw whatever number of cards
whatever
you need.
it is.
Yeah.
You can find a ton of readings online.
72 card pickup.
Yeah, you can find tons and tons of
78 card pickup.
Oh my god, that's awful. That's like a nightmare. You know, so you can choose your own structure for it. You can find tons of card spreads online, on social media, and you can sort of figure out what it is that you want. You can make up your own stuff too.
Yeah.
So
speaking of choose your own adventure, so as you can tell, our altar is sort of tiered. Right? There's like 3 levels, and I like specifically utilize the height difference to indicate different like things in the draw. So like you really, man, the sky's the limit with regard to that. When I do runes, I do it like entirely differently than I do tarot. For me, really the most important thing is, especially if you're choosing your own adventure on this, is write it down. Mm-hmm. Write it down, have a system. It doesn't need to be a system that everybody can... She doesn't need to understand the system. I need to understand the system. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, like, write it down, record it, and, you know, if you're feeling it next time, do it again. If you're not feeling it next time, don't do it. Mm-hmm. Change it up. You know, like, find the place that fits for you. Like, I change my altar all the time. I, like, rearrange stuff.
yeah.
And so, every time I rearrange it, it's a different spread. Right? The cards are laid out in a different place.
Yeah.
And that's really like the sauce on that.
Yeah,
you know
and I found that when you're writing it down, it's a good idea to draw a picture of what the relationship of the cards are.
I totally use like a
little squares,
like a little. Well, no. I don't use little boxes. I make like just sort of like an outline symbol, and then I just write the numbers into the spaces. So that way, like for me, I can tell whether a card was like just a higher up card, or like a focus card, or like if this set was like paired up with a different set, or like something separate. Like I do that kind of stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely. Choose your own adventure, guys. Choose your own adventure.
Yeah. Okay.
We're back.
So that's the spreads. Now there's also different types of readings. That is ways that you can structure your card reading to kind of figure out what card goes where and how to get your cards out of the deck and onto your spread. So there are open readings, and that is letting the cards tell you a story. So that's sort of going in without thinking of anything specifically and shuffling your cards and pulling the cards and then letting the cards drive what it is that you're hearing. This is actually the thing that I do most commonly. I let the cards tell me what they want. There are times that I will pose a question to them or something along those lines, but for the most part, I'm letting the cards tell me what they want to tell me.
I don't ask questions,
boy, do they have words for me.
Yeah, I don't really ask questions. I just pull cards, and they say functionally the exact same thing every time.
Yeah, that's actually really common.
Very, very sassily the exact same thing without regard for me trying to, food.
Yeah, I have found that with an open reading, I most commonly get the advice for how to live my life that the cards want me to do, so like my cards want me to make changes in my life to be a better person, basically, and that is what they constantly tell me in an open reading. So when I get something that's not that, I'm just like, oh, what's this? Yeah. Now then there's question readings. This is probably the most common type of card reading, and that's where you're shuffling the cards and you're thinking like, do I break up with my boyfriend? Why, what is the situation at work going to resolve itself into? That sort of thing. So that's question readings. And then there's theme readings. So the full moon just happened, and it's the full moon in Virgo, and you can find a ton of tarot readings or tarot spreads out there that are themed towards the full moon in Virgo, or when there's a new moon, or the beginning of the month, or a particular holiday.
This is your reading for how March is gonna go, or this is your reading for how this full moon is gonna go until the next full moon, or this is whatever.
By using some of the qualities of that particular event. So Ostara is coming up, and that's spring and new beginnings. So Ostara readings will be about what things should I be starting anew during the spring, and full moon in Virgo stuff would be like what are the attributes of Virgo plus the full moon that I should be kind of thinking about there. And you guys can find a ton of really great readings. There's an aggregator a tarot card Instagram account that I follow called Intarospection, and she puts together the best roundups of tarot spreads. And I like to take some of those tarot spreads and pull the questions that really resonate with me out of those and put those into my own reading for that theme there. So those are really the types of readings that you can have. And you can choose one and you can go with all of them. It's really up to you, much like everything else. So once you've got your reading, your style of reading that you want, and you got your spread picked out, now it's time to do the thing. So you want to shuffle your cards. But actually, before you shuffle your cards, if you're using a significator card, you want to pull that out first, because shuffling the cards, you want that to happen after you're going through the deck and looking at all the pictures and the relations of the cards in the deck.
Don't choose it. That's not...
Yeah, don't choose it. So if you're using a significator, you want to pull that first. But once you've picked a significator, you want to go ahead and shuffle them. But before I go into shuffling them, significators can be a lot of different things. It can be, like we talked about, using the star card, but you can also, a very old school way of doing it is using the court cards from the minor arcana for a significator. So basically each of the suits has a particular theme in the characteristics of what a person from, like, say, the wand suit would look like versus the pentacles suit. And then each of the court cards has an age associated with them as well.
Oh, okay. So this is sort of like, so somebody has made a list of rules relative to, like, functional age or
gender, even.
Or gender, or like physical attributions.
Yes.
So, like, this is if, like, you're trying to have your significator card sort of chosen by a series of rules, as opposed to you just being like, I super feel whatever, Prince of Bloody Swords over here.
Yeah, or I really feel
whatever.
the Empress card.
I don't use any standard tarot deck, so I don't know any of the standard tarot names for like literally anything. And I'm just scrolling through and I'm just like, all I can think of is the word moon, and that's not useful right now.
You're like Prince of the Moon.
Yeah, it's fine. Whatever, guys.
That's fine.
Okay, so these are interesting. I'm gonna read these out.
Oh, okay.
All right, so the wands or staves is light skin, hair, or eye color. Mm-hmm. So the swords is medium skin, hair, or eye color. Cups is also medium skin, hair, or eye color, but I imagine on the darker side of medium, because pentacles is the dark skin or hair or eye color. What is that? Or pentacles or coins.
Yeah.
I always forget that coins is like a thing. I never see that.
Yeah.
And then for like, so that's for your suit. And then it's like, for like super young is page. And then for like just young, like youthful is knight. And then for women, it's the queen. And for men, it's the king. Although, I mean, those are fairly self-explanatory.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. Okay, so I've never heard of anything like this. This is crazy town to me. But that's like an interesting... You know what I want to do is reverse engineer this and use it as a function generator for characters in Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, that would be really
You know
fun.
what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
pull a tarot card and that's what represents your character in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign.
Now, each one of these...
100% I'm going to do this. Wow.
Each one of these court cards also has, like, sort of an inherent personality to them, too.
This is always about court cards, right?
Yes, but this is only the physical attributes. Each one of these also has... Each court card also has, like...
character attributes.
Has character attributes to them, too, aside from the physical attributes, and you can also use that instead. So,
yeah.
like,
so this is like, if you want to use physical attributes, this is the rule structure. And if you want to use like character attributes,
just
then like read the cards and like figure out which one fits for your character. And then obviously, regardless of any of that, like if you're just flipping through your cards and one of them is like deaf you, then like that's deaf you.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like that's fine. You know? And we've both had the like, oh, like I got this card, it's definitely talking about you. Or like it's definitely talking about me. Or like it's definitely talking about some other person.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
That's a more of a contextual type of a thing.
Yeah. So, but like, you know, you can still get that like vibing thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So shuffling and picking the cards. So there's a lot of ways, surprisingly, that you can do this. In general, what you want to do is you want to either think about your question for the card or for the theme of what you're trying to go for. If you are doing a question reading or a theme reading, or if you're doing an open reading, you want to clear your mind or focus on, asking the cards to tell you what you need to hear while you are shuffling the cards. You can shuffle the deck of cards as many times as you want. You can cut the deck of cards as many times as you want. It's usually recommended to shuffle at least 3 times. That's really just so you can get like a good randomized
even
mix
shuffle
in there. It doesn't necessarily have to do with a specific number.
You can choose to listen to the card that fell on the ground, and you can choose that card just fell on the fucking ground because you were not paying attention when you were shuffling. Because let me tell you what, sometimes I drop cards. It's just a thing that happens when you're shuffling in the air with giant cards. Yeah. Because some of my tarot cards are huge.
Yeah.
I have like some huge tarot cards, and those are sometimes that gets out of hand.
Well, and new decks can be quite difficult to work with as well.
Gods, yes.
So you want to kind of keep that in mind. But you really just want to shuffle until you feel like you're ready. Or if you have a particular number that you're shooting for, go ahead and go for that.
Whatever your like meditative focus is.
Yeah. So as far as pulling the cards, we've already talked about using a relational spread where you pick a card and you look at the cards next to that. So that's obviously one way that you can work this. But beyond that, you're really looking at the most popular way is to pull the top cards. So if you're doing a 3-card spread, that's shuffle, 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 card 1, 2, 3 from the top of the deck, or however many cards that you got there. But I actually don't really do that very often. I find that the cards sort of call to me. So if I'm using a flat surface, I will spread the cards out and I will close my eyes and I will wait until I feel the card's energy pull me in, and then that's the card I grab. Or if I am shuffling and standing, our altar is in such a way where you don't really sit at it, you sort of stand next to it. So for the most part, I'm not at a large enough space to be able to fit all the cards. So I'm shuffling in my hands, and then what I do is once I've shuffled traditionally, like when you're shuffling, you do the bridge where it's like every other card, it goes brrr.
Yeah.
I will sort of cut the cards, but I'll just sort of let them fall from one hand into the other hand. And I find that cards will jump out at me. This is partially the way that I like to read things and the way that my deck and I work together. So I prefer the cards to jump out at me. And sometimes when a card jumps out, it's either just like flipped upside down, or it falls out on the ground, and sometimes there's multiple cards that come with it. So when there are multiple cards that come with it, I sort of stop to listen to the universe and to feel out whether or not the deck wants me to look at all 6 cards that fell out, or if it's just the top card. And then I continue to go until I am done pulling all of the cards that I feel like I need to pull, or that I have written down that I want to pull there. So that is the way that I prefer to do it. I like to call it the jump method because the cards literally jump out at you. But if you are doing a reading for another person, it looks very flashy if you fan the cards out and you let them choose the card.
Yeah, totally. I get that. Yeah, for me, it's again, it's mostly I'm shuffling up in the air, and then I just sort of like kind of go through like a cutting motion in my hand until I'm like this card, and then I'll cut for a little while and be like this card, and then I'll cut for a little while and be like this card. Again, I generally tend to do things in threes, so it's generally I'll pull like 3 from 3 different, like right here I have 3 from 3 different decks pulled.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and again, it's like jumping out at you. It's like the card that you're just like, all right, well, this is the time to pull the card. Although sometimes it's like shuffle, and I'll just cut it and just be like 1, 2, 3. I've definitely done that. It just sort of, for me, it sort of depends on what you're doing with the cards, how you're trying to like, feel that day, like what, if your question is very specific, then maybe the motions of very specific motions are needed. But if you're just sort of looking into the ether, something a little bit more chaotic tends to fit.
Yeah, and some of that has to do with the way that you and your deck communicate with each other. Yeah,
exactly. Too. Right, and I mean, like Julie and I, we do very, very different things with regard our altars. One of these days, we'll do on our YouTube channel. We'll do like an altar tour. Our altars are very different.
Yeah.
Like it shares a space, but it's very different. We have very different ways of doing all this stuff, So it's it's a different thing, and everybody's gonna kind of have their thing. So it's real, like what you're feeling on. It's what you're feeling on.
Yeah. Now, another thing that comes up commonly when you're looking at interpretations is reverse cards. So, do you do reverse cards?
I don't do reverse cards, man. I don't know why. It's not like I have like a beef with it. All of my decks have the option of reverse, like it explains reverse. I don't do reverse cards. For me, I think that it is a holdover from rune work, where I didn't do reverse runes because it's not a thing for me. It doesn't make sense to me. That's crazy town to me for runes. It's just a thing. So I don't do it for runes, and so when I started doing tarot, like when I first started doing it, I was like, oh, like it says if it's upside down, it has a different meaning. I'm just gonna listen to the box, you know, like the box of cereal knows best, kind of a thing. And I was just like, I'm reading the book. The book says this is what it means, and I'm like, this doesn't make. Like I'm not feeling it. I don't, you know, it's not like I don't like the way that it's read, but it's just like it doesn't. It's not the answer that makes sense, sort of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's to a point where I don't. When I pull a card, I pull it and I either set it straight or I like turn it and set it so it's straight. And it's for. I think it's just like it's a reading thing, and it's a holdover from runes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just not into the reverse card thing, man. I don't. It's not my jam.
Yeah.
I guess.
I do reverse cards.
I don't know why.
Part of that I think is just like that's the way that I was taught tarot.
Sure, yeah.
And that's just sort of, you know, what you do.
Yeah.
So
I'm probably doing it wrong, by the by.
I mean, really, it's whatever.
I just don't do reverse cards. Like, whole ass, I'm just like, nah, I'm not going to do that.
I mean, I don't
I'm not
think
into
that's
it.
wrong. There are
Doesn't
people
jive
who
with
are
me.
very adamantly against reverse cards, and there
Sure.
are people who are not, and there's nothing wrong with either side
Sure,
of that.
yeah.
So I do reverse cards, and when I look at a card that's reversed, I look at it, well, one, I look at the interpretation of the card in whatever guide or book that it came with, but I also look at it as needing something. So we'll take the Hermit card, for instance. The Hermit card is a traditional card from the Rider-Waite deck. I think it's the 9th card, and it is about solitude and sort of introspection. And there's nothing wrong with that on the plain side. But when you reverse it, it's sort of like the negative effects there. So you're withdrawing, you're spending too much time in your mind. So when I look at that, I like to keep myself open to the interpretation of what it means. So if I were to pull a reversed Hermit card, maybe it's telling me that I need to do the thing that's the upright of the Hermit card. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's saying I'm withdrawing too much, but maybe in the context of the reading, it's saying that I need to withdraw.
Sure, okay, sure.
I do reverse cards, and even more complexly, sometimes I feel like the cards want me to use both the upright and the reverse meaning of the cards.
Yeah.
And that's usually when I lay
sense.
the cards sideways. But that being said, I sometimes a card will jump out at me, and the way that it lands, like on the floor or whatever, may be upside down, but I pick it up and I'm like, you know what? That card doesn't belong upside down. That card belongs right side up.
Sure.
And same thing for vice versa.
Sure.
So I do use reverse cards. There's no particular reason to use them or not to use them. It's really a personal preference.
Yeah, it's whatever you want to do.
It can make things more complicated to understand how to do a reading by using reverse cards, so it's just kind of whatever, you know, works for you there. And then you can also use clarification cards. And these ones are fun, because sometimes you ask your deck a question, and the deck gives you 3 cards, and you're just like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
What you want me to do.
Yeah.
And then you're like, clarify this for me. And you pull another card, and then you're like, oh, that makes sense now. Yeah. Or it still doesn't, and you pull another card. Sometimes you end up with no clarification cards. Sometimes you end up with 12 clarification cards.
It's the police procedural equivalent of saying the word enhance. You do it enough times until the murder is solved or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You just like enhance. Enhance. All right, I get what you're saying now. Okay. I can read the license plate number. That guy's arrested. Murder solved. Whatever. I don't know how that works.
Now, that being said, the cards sometimes don't mean what the meaning of the card is. Sometimes the cards will give you a card, and it's more about the image of what is on the card than anything. So I did a daily card pull one time, and I was like, tell me what's in store for my day cards. And my cards were like, here is this, what was it? I think it was like the 3 of Cups. It's the one where there's 3 ladies and they're holding 3 cups and they look like they're having a party. And I was just like, dope, I'm gonna have a good day. Turns out we ended up having like a little happy hour drink after work with like me and like a couple other people from work. That was just sort of like impromptu and unplanned. So sometimes it's more about the physical representation of what is on the card than what the meaning of the card is. Yeah. So don't stress yourself out about what they mean in that respect.
You don't need to really like hold on too tight to the like kind of crazy details of it, right? It's the thing where it's like if you're pulling some cards and you're feeling whatever this card, you're looking at the pictures. And you're like, I get what's going on. I like this card right now, and that card has a meaning that like is just you're not vibing with or whatever. Then like maybe the card means what you thought it meant to begin with this one time. I mean, that's the thing with interpretation is that it's interpretive. We can all just sort of interpret. Yeah, it's in the word. You know.
Yeah. Well, and that's why it's really important to write it down. So like everything we talk about, fire safety.
Yeah. Be safe with fire, guys. Jesus. I have so many burns. Don't get burned. That stuff hurts.
And then we always talk about writing it down. So write it down. Now, it's important to write it down because sometimes what you see over time makes more sense. So when I had that daily card pull with the 3 of Cups, I was like, oh, cool. Like, I get what this means. But really, the next day when I came back to look at it, I was like, I see what you're telling me, cards. I get it.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have a greater, well, hindsight is 20/20, right? So sometimes you have a greater understanding of what the cards were trying to tell you after a certain amount of time. So sometimes I'll use a reading. I'll do a reading for myself, and I'll leave it on my altar for a couple of days to kind of like let the idea behind it gel and sort of think about what it means. That way it kind of comes full circle.
Yeah, and I don't do a reading every day. I read, I'll do it, and then like this one that's been up here has been sitting here for like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 days or something.
Yeah.
Probably going to take it down today or tomorrow, do something new. You know, and sometimes I just clear it all off and it just sits empty for a bit.
Yeah. So it's a great idea to write it down because when you come back to it, and you should come back to your readings periodically, especially if you're doing it for like a question, you know, or for an event that's happening in the world, you know, that way you can kind of, 1, understand how your cards are communicating with you, but 2, to see what that really looks like. I did a reading for a friend, and when I first did this reading, I felt like I understood what it meant. And then I went back to it. My friend and I were talking about, you know, something else like a couple of months later. And in talking to them and everything that had happened since the initial reading, I was like, oh, these cards make sense in an entirely different way now. Because sometimes when you're doing a reading, you're just like, I don't know what that is supposed to be telling me. Yeah. And then later on through time, you sort of get that. So it's a good idea to write down that stuff. If nothing else, so you can go back and look at it. And it's a good idea to go back and update and make notes on it, especially if you're looking at question readings or theme readings or a reading for another person also. That way you can kind of understand what the cards are telling you in a more evolved sense.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, listen, it's practice, it's repetition, and you know, and it's analysis, and it's patience, and with time, you know, the understanding comes to you, and it's really that simple. Mm-hmm. As unbelievably complex as that all actually is. That's in practice. But yeah, either way, this has been a beginning tarot reading. This has been the very, very beginning of it, a light dusting of it. We will probably, in the long run, go into detail into suits and major arcana. I mean,
a deeper look.
We could do a deep dive just into like the death card.
Oh yeah,
no question.
There are some cards that you can just do a deep dive just on that one card.
At some point in time soon, we will do a part 2 for our tarot deck thing. I have some new decks, but I know I still have some decks coming in the mail. Yeah. And so does Julie. So, look forward to more of that.
And, you know, if you guys are checking out our Patreon, we are going to have a Book of Shadows downloadable page for our patrons for this.
Yeah. So
we're getting together some for our previous ones, and we're going to have a sort of cheat sheet for a beginner's guide to tarot reading on there. If you check out our Patreon.
So, check out our Patreon. Go there, subscribe, and get that dope Book of Shadows content. Mm-hmm. So we're moving forwards on that.
Yeah, and our next podcast is going to be in 2 weeks.
Yes.
If you're listening to us, as it comes out, and we're going to be talking about Ostara.
Yeah, Ostara's next, guys. So
Yeah.
let's get ready. Ostara 101. So a quick look, well, as quick as any of us can possibly manage at this point in time. Look at Ostara. But either way, I have been John Norgrove. This has been Julie Norgrove. This is the Horn
And Cauldron
podcast, and stay fresh out there, guys. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.